Penny, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Just to give a little bit of background to anyone who's listening, you were the first marketing director that was hired at Xero in 2013 outside of New Zealand.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you paint a little bit of a picture back then? Because now everybody knows Xero,
Mm.
right? It's like, oh, of course, Xero, very well known. What was the state of things back then in Australia when you said, I work for a company called Xero?
Well, the first thing I'd say is everyone thought I worked for Xerox. So everyone was like, why are you joining a photocopy company?
Isn't that dying?
Yeah. And I was like, no, no, it's Xero with an X, Xero, no X at the end, and Xero with an X. And they were like, I just don't understand why you'd leave this and go to Xero. Who's Xero? And honestly, at the beginning, I'd say, oh, it's the alternative to MYOB. That was how I introduced it in Australia. And look, honestly, I was approached by someone I'd worked with before in a tech company, and he approached me and said, look, there's an opportunity to come up. They're forming out the marketing team outside of New Zealand for the first time. Would you be interested in having a chat? So I went and spoke to the MD at the time, Chris Reid. And first up, I just was like, you're a great guy, ex Microsoft, but just had a really sort of great hustle about him. And then he was basically saying, I'm forming out the first leadership team outside of New Zealand. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Then I went and had a look on the website. And the website was beautiful. Like the Xero brand has always been beautiful from day one. And that was because one of the co founders was actually the designer at the same time. So they designed the product at the same time that they built the product. And that design flowed into the brand and the website and all that sort of stuff. And they had this really quirky video, and we called it the Treehouse video. And it was essentially, an accountant a person who lived in a treehouse, and he was talking to his accountant. So that was, swapping around, it's a funny little video. And I was like, who are these people? You know, I love it. I need to know more. And that video was the one that hooked me to go and have the conversation. So I met Chris Reid and went, yeah, I want to work with you. I saw the opportunity of the brand, which was just beautiful and quirky. Quirky was the word I sort of used a lot at the beginning. And then I saw blank piece of paper. And for me, that's always been, the attraction.
Exciting. Tell me a little about the first 90 days. So you joined the role.
Mm.
How did you approach building the marketing strategy?
On the run was pretty well the summary of it. Actually, just before I joined, I got called into a board meeting or, dialed into a board meeting, and they said, we've just released a few million funding and it's to, stimulate growth in Australia. That's your first job. So on the very first day, I was interviewing and briefing agencies around Xero. I hadn't even been onboarded. I hadn't even seen the product other than what I'd actually seen, on the website before. And there I was by the afternoon at, Leo Burnett's and two other agencies going, oh, this is what we do and this is why we're different. And this, so I was
Wow.
like, okay, this is a sign of where this thing's going. So then I had had a budget. I had a direction from the board, to stimulate growth in Australia. I had a timeline, which I look back now and I go, how I did not collapse in a heap when I heard that. Maybe I was a bit younger and stupider, but it was 9 weeks. And they said, you need to be in market in 9 weeks. And we had no brand book. We had no ICPs locked down. We had nothing in writing. And that was sort of the magic of Xero at the time. It was really fluid. It was being directed by the chief design officer, but marketers weren't really having access to that. So I literally had to build and run at the same time. So I found an agency at the time, Sputnik, that was just like sort of similar to Xero, like sort of a little bit of a challenger, trying to make their mark. I literally just said to them, it's you and me. That's it. I've got this ridiculous deadline. I don't have any media buying. I have no assets. I have no plan. We're in it together. And they signed up. So that was a fantastic sort of moment. I look back and go, that was a win. And then essentially I sort of built the strategy as I was creating it at the same time. And I recognized the main insight I had is people who used the product really liked it. Like the product was always really good. The accountants, which was a really sort of key area about accountants and bookkeepers was our channel, they were like, this product's really good. This is a real contender, but no one's ever heard of it. And then the third insight was no one knows how to spell it. So how, they keep going zero, obviously like a number with zero. And I was like, okay, there's the insight. I just literally need to tell people, our name and how to spell it. And that was it. So I just focused on those two things. So I looked at it more like a hello campaign. We were introducing ourselves to the market. And I also took the brand sentiment that I could just see as a marketer and as a consumer, that we were really human, we were really approachable, we were really different, we were clearly a challenger. And honestly, even though we'd been given money or budget from the board, it wasn't significant. So I had to do it in a really scrappy way. So I said, all right, we're going to focus on out of home digital, which was sort of just coming into its world.
What did that mean back there?
Uh, well, actually, it was a bit of an opportunity because out of home people think of massive big billboards, etc. I was looking at bus shelters and anything that was at street level and anything that basically implied, we're at your level. So in fact, I avoided the big out of home, probably because it was also really expensive as well, and I could get a better buy on the out of home. I then looked at, okay, we were focusing on small business operators. I had to get really ruthless and go, the bulk are in Sydney and Melbourne. Let's just focus our efforts there. And then I did, sort of bizarre things like we had billboard posters, like rock posters that you have on the, underneath a bridge. Someone said, "Oh, that's a good idea." Okay, yeah, let's do that. I was throwing everything at it. So it became radio, small format, out of home, street level, billboard posters, and obviously, digital. And even back then, digital was still sort of early days, how it was, building into the marketing mix. But I recognized from a speed and scale and efficiency, they were the channels that were going to get me what I needed to do. And the whole insight was, hello, Richmond, we're zero, zero with an X. That's all we focused on.
Wow. So that was it. That was the message. It wasn't to sign off. It wasn't we're gonna solve your accounting issues and challenges.
Hello.
Wow.
It was just a polite hello, very Kiwi, polite hello, zero with an X, check us out. So we were definitely trying to get trial, but our first intent was, have you heard of us? And that from a partner channel was actually really important because the accountants were saying, we're telling our clients or small business owners that, you should use Xero. And they've got, I've never heard of it. So that was the insight. They just need to say, I've heard of it. So when their trusted advisor goes, you should try Xero. Oh, I've heard of that. Xero with an X. It's pretty simple.
I see. So the strategy for the partner strategy was being implemented right at the beginning.
Day one. Yeah. That was honestly, the founder of Xero, Rogeri, recognized from day one that the accountant was such an integral part of the product and product experience, the difference. And the reason why he recognized that is that he had been sold many businesses and his relationship with the accountant was vital. And he recognized that if the accountant had the same information that he did, at the same time, real-time data, that actually, A, speeds up the process, way more efficient. None of this stupid back and forth, floppy disk states, that's what we're talking. And having a cloud-based product allowed you to do that. So he recognized it was this sort of perfect triangle of the product, the advisor, accountant and bookkeeper, and the client itself. And so by building a product that allowed the accountant and bookkeeper to be in the product from day one, thus cloud, that was it, it was groundbreaking back then. He recognized that's my channel to market. And also small business owners, they were basically being ignored by, technology, the big techs, etc. But the accountant and bookkeeper was like, absolutely vital to their success. There's not that many channels which they're so integral in the day-to-day functioning. I mean, they might speak to their bookkeeper every day. They might connect with their accountant every week. Like it's like their second spouse in some cases. So it was really important that we brought them in there. And then that was the most efficient channel because we knew who they were. We knew where they were. We knew where they played. And they were also being ignored as well. So we empowered them, which then, they became the army.
One question I want to ask you is you don't have 100% BB. marketing background. Is that
No.
what were some of the learnings that you brought from your background into the B2B world when you were doing the Zero programs?
I mean, it's a good question. I've thought a little bit about this. My career in marketing was essentially built in small business. So I was either the sole marketing operator or, a team of two or three, etc. And I actually started my career in media. And it was honestly just the first job I got. So ended up in media. So I sort of saw that side of the world. So dealing with, advertisers, certainly the sales component. And then I recognized, probably halfway through my 20s, I was like, you know what? I want to be in the marketer seat, not in the sales seat anymore. So I went back to uni, did a marketing postgrad, and, ended up in marketing. And I ended up in professional services, associations. And I suppose it was probably always an element of B2B. I was consulting for quite a lot of, small industrial styles, manufacturing, groups, but all small business. And I was sort of, in one way, it was fantastic because I was, being exposed to anything and everything as a generalist marketer for consumers. And I never worked in retail or FMCG, but I definitely worked in and it was sort of, I always describe B2B marketing as beta consumer, beta human, beta C. I think everyone is a consumer, everyone is a buyer. I don't think you should treat B2B like a business. At the end of the day, it's a human I'm selling to. So I sort of always took that sort of philosophy into every one of my marketing job. Is like I'm selling to an individual with, feelings and emotions and pains and quite irrational at times. I'm not going to treat them as this rigid, business. So when I moved into Xero, it was the first time I'd actually, worked for a big business. And Xero, obviously back then wasn't a big business. I think we were 800, but scattered all around the world. And obviously go to market was pretty small back in the day. So I took that same philosophy of like, yeah, it's B2B, but it's really B2C as well because it's the end user. The B2B part is the accountant and bookkeeper. The B2C is a person who owns the cafe down the road. And at the end of the day, they're just a person. And that's the way I'm going to treat them.
Tell me a little bit about the brand experience and what did brand experience mean to you at this stage, and how did you kind of practically bring that to life?
I don't think I really coined the expression of brand experience until I moved into the GM of brand role, um, because I never really articulated it as that's an experience where we're bringing our brand to life. But what we were doing just sort of naturally and organically in the early days is that we recognized every touch point was a brand experience. We saw every individual inside Xero as a brand ambassador. So honestly, wearing the t-shirt was a big thing. And the t-shirt, became a big thing. We'd have an annual t-shirt display. Everyone got it on the 1st of April and the kickoffs, and we'd have all the photos and stuff. But people were super proud to wear that t-shirt. So it was more like, hang on, there's something in this, every person, that's a brand touch point. The second point was, and we did this because part of the channel, strategy was to have events. And the events is really just that face-to-face building trust, credibility, etc. In the early days, we just ran intro sessions the whole time where our sales team would go out and have the host a group of 5, 10, 15 sort of, intro sessions where accountants and bookkeepers would come and learn about it. So it was very much in that, hello, we're Xero, we're here, stage. They'd be wearing their tee, they'd be at an event, we'd be thinking about, coffee. Everyone loves good coffee. Just make sure there's always great coffee. Always just make it in a really comfortable environment. So we were sort of forming out the formula without quite realizing. So events for the channel we went from small events to what we called road shows. And that was like taking the show on the road. They started off, 30 people in, Sydney. By the time I left, there were 3,000 in Sydney. It was ridiculous. And we'd take them around the country for the month we actually used to do 4 rounds of road shows in the early years.
What is it we took them around the country?
We took the event around the country.
Got it.
So, and we did it every quarter. It was ridiculous. I practically killed the team, but that's how we really got in early with that face-to-face engagement. So for me, that's a really strong brand experience. And then we always had this concept called XeroCon, which was this, conference. And that honestly started off as a lunch hosted in a winery in New Zealand with 30 people. That was the first XeroCon.
When was that? Do you know?
It was before me, but not, it was probably 2011.
Yeah, right.
Roger, he literally just brought together some of the accountants and hosted them in a nice winery in Hawke's Bay. And I think he probably just riffed off it and said, "Oh, it's Xero conference. Oh, XeroCon." That's how half of our names convention started turning up. And it was sort of just stuck, right? And then by the time I turned up in Australia, we were running XeroCon and we were getting about sort of 400 to XeroCon. It was our big, thing.
Where was that?
First one that I was there was in Sydney. We'd alternate between Sydney and Melbourne. And honestly, it was really just which venue we could find in the time we wanted. There wasn't much rhythm or, sort of cadence to the whole thing. It was a little bit, oh yeah, XeroCon, oh yeah, quick, just throw that thing on. So when I got there and after a year or two, I went, hang on, there's something in here. These beautiful face-to-face event engagement experiences with the channel, they're just getting bigger and people are like talking about them and people are, saying, when's the next one? And we were like, there's something. So then we got a little bit more formulaic and just said, all right, roadshows are going to be February. We're going to go 20, sites around the country. It's going to be a beautiful experience.
20 sites.
20 sites.
Every quarter.
No, we only did it in February by the end.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you go to Darwin, if you go to Albury, if you go to Melbourne, you'll have a similar experience. Different venue, but you'll have the same content, the same vibe, the same coffee. We went, Mildura, Bendigo, Ballarat.
Wow.
Took the show on the road. And I think that was another turning point, particularly with the partners, is we came to them rather than saying,
Fly Sydney.
yeah, exactly. And then XeroCon sort of, and they were all free too. So everything was free to attend. And it was a great learning connection day. All the surveys used to say, why do you come? And they go, to see my friends. They were building their own community. Then XeroCon became a bit of the jewel in the crown. And then we were like, okay, let's make XeroCon, special, unique, because people did pay to come. Like, we never, pay for itself, but they still had to come out of their office for 2 days. They still had to get there. It was usually Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane. So there was still time and commitment from them to be there, plus the investment. And they would bring their whole teams. We'd have people turning up, like 20 of them, all in their T-shirts. It was like their big annual, get together. And then they'd build, like, we had clients or accountants building babycom around it. They would have like these little, spin on permits. We had pre-con. And I'm like, hang on, this is getting out of control. I loved it. So for me, brand experience, I was like, that's brand experience. We're bringing the brand to life. So those events were really important and they still are at Xero. And I'm super proud that, I was the one who sort of recognized but built the structure and the cadence. And now XeroCons run around the world, roadshows run around the world. The formula is strong. It's now scalable, which is great. But brand experience is so much more. It's the T-shirt. It's the time, they come into the office and the first person they see, hey, can I help you? So it was just that sort of culture. And then, of course, brand experience is, when they come to our brand channels, how easy is it to connect to our people? How can I get training, access to training? It's all of those touch points, that brand experience.
Is there anything else any tactics or channels or strategies that you executed that quote unquote would be considered like guerrilla marketing? I feel like your billboards are going to fall into that category of putting event posters up underneath the bridge or something. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you were executing that was a little bit out there?
We did one that was bizarre. We called it Cloudstreet, and we ran it a few years and sort of iterated on every year. But the first year we took a site in the city, a pop-up shop equivalent, and every night we would I don't know what you call bump in a new small business. So every day a new business would turn up in that pop-up shop, and they were a Xero customer, of course. And so it was an activation, and it was really trying to get, earn media, but also we always wanted to promote the end user, the customer, and, real customers. That was I wouldn't say it was guerrilla marketing, but that was one of my mantras in all our campaigns when I was, the lead. They only featured real people. They only featured our customers, and it was so genuine, and so it gave them a buzz, it gave us a buzz. It was a win-win for everyone, and I think that authenticity really came through in the early days. So we riffed on that and said, "All right, let's make Cloudstreet." So in that first, to activation, it was like every night, God, the marketing team would go in and they'd literally move out a chocolate person, the next person would be a lingerie person, the next day, a surprise, lingerie shops in the the Xero store. The next day would be, someone selling cheese, and it was just bizarre what we did. And as I said, it nearly killed them. And then the next year I went, "Okay, we gotta make this scale." So we bought a, shipping container with 3 glass sides, and it was able to pack down like a Lego, you know, sort of thing, which mean we could ship it up and down the coast in a, big trailer. And we took a site in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. Melbourne was, say, Fed Square. Sydney must have been Circular Quay, and Brisbane was in the main mall up there. And essentially, we put this container in the middle of the mall for a week, and small business would trade out of that for a week. And then we built a whole campaign around why you should go and, buy silk scarves or embroidered things from this person in Fed Square. So we made them the hero of the moment.
Wow.
So Cloudstreet, I was pretty proud of that one. I think they still might have the shipping container because I had to buy it.
Yeah, what happened to the shipping container? I was like,
Yeah, no, I said I thought it would get that.
what did the PO for that stuff look like?
It actually wasn't. I mean,
Because the purchase order was like,
it
goes to the finance and is like, why is marketing buying a container?
like a shipping container. It was a bit of an unusual CapEx request. It said on CapEx, so that was okay, not on my budget. So, right. They did ask a few years later, why are we still paying storage for this thing? Yeah, look, I think that was the other thing, and especially in those early days of the Challenger brand, honestly, we were back to do sort of crazy things. Like we had another one where it was when, makeover shows were really big. And so we were like, okay, let's make, and we were always trying to find ways to have campaigns around the partners. And it was a bit tricky because,
Makeover, you mean the
like, literally an office makeover. So, they had to apply why they wanted to, be the winner of the makeover. So we collected all this fantastic content and stories and stuff. And then the winner, and we literally then went in and filmed it. And over 3 days, painting like one of those reality TV shows, painting, obviously, new plants, new furniture, all that fun stuff. Then the second part was really an overhaul of their tech. So we would, often they were like literally still had filing cabinets and stuff like that. And we were like, okay, we need to get you digitized. And then the third element is we'd bring in our training team and we'd upskill their staff on not just the accounting, zero factor, but, how to do social selling, how to, improve your website, that sort of stuff. So it was a bit of a holistic makeover of a partner. And then, obviously we got great content out of it.
wow. I love it.
It was fun.
You've obviously now joined a different company
Yes.
and you're at Affinda, which is another scale up. What are some of the things that you're bringing to the Affinda mix from your past experience or what you've done at Xero?
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason I was attracted to joining Affinda was it is the equivalent of what Xero was, 12, 13 years ago with cloud. So cloud was just disrupting the world and the business. And if you got in early, then you could define the guardrails of cloud and own it. And that's really how Xero got a foothold against the incumbents because they had legacy systems, they didn't know what to do with it, that were, playing catch up from day one. And Affinda is in with AI, it's in a similar stage. I mean, everyone clearly it's overhyped at the moment, AI. But Affinda's been doing it for 10 years, sort of quietly under the behind the scenes building this incredible AI platform for document processing. And that's just the beginning. Like we use this term, we started with document processing because we know there's so much more, but that was the immediate need. So I recognized, okay, 12, 15 years ago it was cloud, early century. Now it's AI. So I took that sort of same mentality of like, my job is to basically educate and calm down the business owner of what is AI and how it's relevant to them. The way I'm looking at Affinda is certainly, are we presenting the brand like as good as the product? And I would say that's definitely a learning milestone from Xero is our positioning of the product and our brand was identical. As I said, the designer was the designer of the product, who's also was the one who designed the brand and the look and feel. So Affinda's playing catch up in that area. And, it's obviously a priority number one that we're working on. Stay tuned. The second part is that I sort of recognized that, everyone was like, accounting software, how boring. Accountants, really, who cares? They're just pencil pushers, whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to make back office sexy. That's what I did with accountants. Why can't I do that with Affinda? So I thought I'm going to challenge it. I'm going to behave like a challenger, but actually, call it out and say, yeah, it's not sexy, but it's really vital. It's really important. If you get this right, you can do better work. I mean, we say, the purpose of a Affinda is to unlock more meaningful work and to use AI with your people to actually lift it to a whole new level. We don't want to, AI is one area and AI, it's obviously, machine learning, blah, blah, but it's really the combination of artificial and human intelligence, which makes it amazing. So I want to bring the human element into Affinda and make the brand equal, if not comparable to how good the product is. That's the opportunity for Affinda.
Are there areas that you look at and that might be from a tactics perspective, it might be from the channels perspective, and you're like, this will not work?
Probably what I'm bringing is experience of and confidence to the team. So, I mean, obviously I've lived through learned experience of, that was good, but it didn't really move the needle. That was a bit of a sugar hit, but really, if I'm going to invest some time and effort, it's going to be over here. So I'm bringing that experience to the table. And I've always said there's no such thing as a bad idea. It's just timing. So it's having that experience of knowing when's the right time to do something. I would say to any scale up, honestly, any business, and if anything, actually, the harder it gets is to focus and prioritize. And that's been the biggest job, is to actually get you to literally remove the distractions and just have 2 or 3 big bets. And so once we really lock down what our North Star metric is, how do we measure that North Star metric? What are we going to do to hit that number?
Can you share anything with that?
Win an SEO. We've just got to get that content and SEO engine just firing. And at the moment, we're over dependent on, paid. So I've got to get a really nice, healthier mix in the channels. LLMs is obviously, an incredible opportunity and everyone's fighting for their place there. So, having a really focused strategy of how we make the list through LLMs is really important.
Yeah, you're almost going to scrap SEO now, just for excitement.
Oh, it's a big debate, but honestly, I see SEO and GEO as essentially the same thing. You can overcorrect, and I feel like on LinkedIn, everyone's going, SEO's dead, whatever.
Yeah.
The principles are the same. Be found in search. Search drives to trial, or to website, high intent, trial. It's still the same mechanisms. It's honestly just a different way of getting there.
Yeah, very sure. Very sure. Any other big bets?
Honestly, quality content. It's using AI is amazing, but also I think it's really dumbing down a hell of a lot. And we're losing that sort of ability for, as I said, combining the best of, artificial and human intelligence. So for me, quality content will win every time. And that's got to come. The idea or the shortlist or the headline might come from AI, but the thought and consideration has to come from a human, an expert. So obviously content can be a quote, a video, a long form, 1,000 different things. But I do, a podcast, but I do believe that unless you have a human with their hands on the levers, you're just going to be, in the middle ground. To stand out, bring the human back in.
I was chatting to somebody and they said something interesting. They said they would go on a LLM or ChatGPT, whatever it is, and they would say, I want to talk about this. Give me 10 ideas. And they would look at the ideas. They're like, all right, great. I'm not going to talk about those ideas.
That's incredible. And I actually really agree with it. And that's when you can see things are starting to really, Google's ranking quality. We're not ranking has been, everyone, that's honestly, it keeps going back to, commit to your brand, commit to your tone, commit to your ICP. Just focus on what you do really, really well and own it.
There's a lot of marketers out there that they're looking at joining scale ups. If you were mentoring them, what would be your advice to them?
It's a good question because I'm a coach. Big difference between startup and scale up. I think that's probably the distinction, and the tipping point of when you become a scale up is probably up for debate. My opinion with a scale up is you have a product that people are buying, a product that's proven. You know, you're beyond MVP. You can see the TAM, you can ring fence what you're going for, and you can certainly sort of understand, well, how can I build a plan to attack that? Startup is like it's spray and pray at that stage. It's just going after anything and everything and crossing their fingers. I would say, and the reason why I joined the scale up is probably the why I joined Xero back in the day was I loved the ability to have my hands on the levers, to have an impact and to sit in a meeting and make a decision, you know, with the group and then to be able to execute it that afternoon. That is the gift of a scale up is that you are you can be so influential. What I would counsel people about is you are actually really influential. You can't just have a brain fart of an idea and then not sort of follow it through. You've got to be balance that reactive, proactive sort of approach. But you've also got to be quite comfortable to work really hard. Like I'm probably working harder now than I did, did for years. Up till like 1 o'clock in this morning, and doing stuff that it's like I'm so stimulated by it. I'm learning. It's like the gift of learning again is really exciting. I really respect and rate the founders that I've joined with Affinda, where I did speak to a lot of people in my journey, after leaving Xero. And I was like, yeah, but no. And so I would look at the founders, I'd look at the product, I'd look at the market opportunity, and then I'd get real and say, are you prepared to really do the hard yards? And that's, building a team around that to drive with you is the next step at the leap.
As you were talking, I was thinking, what crazy ideas Penny has for Affinda of the Cloudstreet category of ideas or the under the bird billboards. You got anything cooking?
We've got another brand called Draftable, and it's a document comparison software mainly for lawyers. And anyway, that's new brand identity. Except is a product. It's really good. Lawyers love it, and it's such a boring space. It's sort of like document comparison for lawyers. So anyway, we've been doing some event strategy recently, and I thought, you know what, let's just go. Let's just be silly. So now I've created, chocolates, merch, etc. Yummy, nice chocolate, good quality chocolate, and with funny little slogans. But I just threw a few laptop stickers recently down, and it was like lawyers make better lovers, and just everything, they're going on hotcakes. People are loving them. So you don't need to have an amazing, budget. You can just be fun and playful, talk to the human, but it's like sort of just, and actually don't dominate the brand um, over your message. Like just have that sort of connection with them. So that's probably something I did recently. Laptop stickers, lawyers make better lovers.
What is one thing marketers still get wrong when they're trying to grow in a noisy, overcrowded space?
Getting caught up in the hype is the first thing, and get off LinkedIn. It's got its place, but let's face it, it's people shouting at you and trying to dominate. And like LinkedIn as a channel is an important channel for B2B, but you know distinguish hype and reality. The second thing I'd say is honestly they try and do everything at once, and we all want to do that, etc. And I had just a conversation yesterday, and I said I'm 6 months in. I'm starting to turn the team around with, we're getting the brands back in, things are going to be good for rollout. And I said, I'm frustrated that I'm being really reactive, not proactive. I don't have that ability to think and be creative and stuff. And the person in my meeting said, no, back up, stop there. You're being responsive. You're not being reactive. You're responding to the market opportunity. And it was honestly just the flip of that language. And I went, you're right. I am responding to the time and the opportunity right now, where once I get the foundations a bit more stirring and get the marketing engine sort of rolling a bit, then I can be way more proactive. But there's nothing wrong with being responsive at this point. The only other thing, and it's probably coming directly as well from the same conversation, is I've been at Xero for 10 years. I knew everything. I knew the history. I knew the backstories. I knew the people. I had the relationships. I knew obviously the product. I knew everything. I had started at Affinda and I was like, I don't know everything. How am I going to learn everything? And it's literally 3 brands in the group. It's pretty complex. It's a new world. And I was sort of getting, sort of frustrated myself that I didn't know everything. And the same feedback was, you're dealing with people who've got 60 years of knowledge combined.
And you're in the space that it's just, we were talking about it before we started the podcast, is you're in the AI space and keeping up with that space, just the speed that that moves. I think the reactive versus responsive, I don't think there is any other option.
Don't bother with a 3-year marketing plan or a 1-year marketing plan. Honestly, 6 months, quarter. I am literally reiterating constantly on the plan, and that's taken a bit of a learning to be okay with that.
Penny, this was a really awesome conversation.
It's actually really great to sort of step back and talk about, the last 10 years of my career, but also probably really validated how I've got to this point and why I chose, to join Affinda. And probably that's the other thing I'd say from a coaching point of view is when you're thinking about, joining, your next chapter. And I actually worked with a business coach to get to this point where it's like, find a company that aligns with your values. So yeah, there's the values on the poster on the wall, but it's really like, have the conversation, talk to other people, find people, get a really good sense of who they are and the way they operate. So that's the values part. The second thing is just really define what is important to you. And it's at different stages. And I'm a little bit older and I was like, you know what? I don't need to be the CEO, but what I need to be is of influence. So then I went, you know what? I want to be a CMO in a scale up because I can influence. Where I might have made a different decision 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. So I certainly have recognized it's a timing thing, but values aligned and align with your personal purpose, it just feels right. And when you get that sort of formula, it's magic. So that's what I would coach to anyone joining with Scale Up. Align yourself.
Penny, thanks so much for the chat.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed it. Hope we can do it again.